Doctor, isn't it true that you have never testified on behalf of an injured victim? Would you like to learn what the doctor's response was? Come join me, I'll tell you. Hi, I'm Jerry Oginski. I'm a New York medical malpractice and personal injury trial attorney practicing law here in the state of New York. That was a question I asked a doctor on cross-examination in a medical malpractice case here in Queens County in New York. Now, the doctor was on the witness stand testifying on behalf of the doctor and the hospital in this particular case. And one of the first questions I asked him when I got up to cross-examine him was, Doctor, isn't it a fact that you have never testified on behalf of an injured victim? That is true. Now, doctor, isn't it true that 2 weeks ago I called your office? I don't know. Well, isn't it true that your secretary's name is Jane? Yes. And isn't it a fact that I called her 2 weeks ago to ask her whether you would be willing to review records on behalf of an injured victim? Well, I'm not sure about that. Doctor, I want you to assume that I spoke to Jane in your office 2 weeks ago, and in fact, I took notes about that conversation. Do you have a memory of that? I'm not sure. Doctor, I want you to assume that I spoke to Jane, and during the course of my discussion, she said that she would have to ask you whether or not you would be willing to review records on behalf of an injured victim, and if you found that there was wrongdoing, that you would then be willing to come in and testify on his behalf. Do you recall that conversation? No, I don't. Doctor, did Jane come to you and ask you questions about whether or not you would be willing to review a case on behalf of a plaintiff, an injured victim? Oh yes, now I do start to remember that. Doctor, isn't it a fact that you told your secretary that under no circumstance would you ever testify on behalf of an injured victim? Oh no, I didn't say that. Doctor, isn't it true that you have never testified on behalf of an injured victim? Yes, well that's because nobody's ever asked me. Really, doctor? Well, only 2 weeks ago I asked you. Do you have a memory of that? No, I don't. Doctor, I'm asking you here right now. Would you be willing to review medical records on behalf of an injured victim to determine whether or not there was wrongdoing that occurred during the course of this patient's treatment? Well, I don't know if I'd be willing to review. There we go, doctor. Now let me ask you the question again. And again, this is what the doctor continued to do, and the reality was this medical expert, who was an emergency room physician, in the course of his 25-year career had not only never reviewed records on behalf of an injured victim, he had never come in to testify on behalf of the injured victim. Now what does that mean, and why was that important for the jury? It was important because I wanted to show to the jury that this doctor only testifies on behalf of the defense. So he clearly had a bias. And I couldn't come right out to the jury and say, look, this medical expert, not this guy is an anatomical model that I've named John, but the medical expert who was on the witness stand, I couldn't come right out and say, look at this doctor, he's totally biased. He only testifies on behalf of the defense. So instead I had to go around and show the jury clearly, by virtue of the fact that he refuses to, number one, review records, number two, come in and testify on behalf of an injured victim, that the only people he wanted to come in and testify on behalf were people who were being sued. And isn't it interesting that of the people he had come in to testify for, it was always his position that the case was defensible and that there was no merit in any of the cases he ever testified about. Isn't that fascinating? So here, during the course of his 25-year career, he's never had a case where the doctor or the hospital involved has never done anything wrong or improper. That was a fascinating way to expose to this jury that this doctor was clearly biased. And I'm happy to report that I was successful in getting this client money and that the jury awarded my client. So why do I tell you about this? Because I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight and understanding in what occurs during the cross-examination process, to be able to show bias, to show that a doctor or a witness is in favor of one party or the other. Chances are you're watching this, you have questions or concerns about your own particular matter. Well, if your matter happened in the state of New York, what I encourage you to do is pick up the phone and call me. I answer legal questions like yours every single day. You can reach me at 516-487-8207 or by email at lawmed10@yahoo.com. I'm Jerry Oginski here in New York. Thanks for watching.